Marriage. Part 1, Story.
These writings are dedicated to Liza's only sister, Lauren Louise, whose heart never stopped beating in time with Liza's, and to Liza's only brother, Maxwell Benjamin, Liza's best and favorite all-time wrestling opponent. When a story is written, its contents are not forgotten. When a story is told, it becomes something else, a memory of who we were, a kind of cathartic wish, a prayer, or a plea. When you tell that story, your heart starts to beat with every word of it, and the story becomes part of you, and you become part of the story. You're consumed by it. You caress each word, and you fall in love with it. And even when you are finished telling it, it stays with you, because your heart still beats with it. You realize that stories are all we really have when things are no longer in front of our eyes. We don't have anything else to cling to. Every word in this story is true. I used to drill Liza relentlessly with math questions and spelling words, starting when she was around 6 or 7 years old. She was the kind of kid who could learn division or multiplication on the first try within the space of about 20 minutes. "Oh, I get it now, Dad," I would hear her say. A love-hate relationship with the drilling developed fast and early because she would object to the degree of difficulty on one breath and then insist in the other that she be given more. This drama usually played out looking at her little face in the rearview mirror while she was sitting in her booster chair. I can see her eyes in my mind right now. 14 minus 7 times 10 plus 50 divided by 12 plus 90. "Dad, that's too hard. That's not fair," I would hear her shout. "Dad, you're being mean. She's only 7. Lauren, her lovely young sister and ubiquitous attorney, would chime in. Then, silence. I would see her looking out the window, and then down at her little fingers moving around, counting away. "What came after the second part?" she would ask eventually. The hard part about the damn five-stage questions was that I had to remember them myself. And if I got caught in a contradiction or a change of pattern, she would nail me, and nail me hard. Both her and her attorney. They were always lurking. Like a champion doubles team, they were always waiting for me to make an unforced error so they could convert. The game was always on. Especially between me and Liza, the game was usually always on. After regurgitating the challenge question again, I could not help myself but to take another step deeper into the drama. It was all too purely tempting for me. "Liza Lou, if you get this one, then you guys get double scoops at Ben & Jerry's after dinner." Of course, all hell would break loose then, and a melee of objections and complaints surrounding issues of fairness, difficulty level, age appropriateness, etc. would ensue. The bribes especially would push the edge of tears at times. But all throughout, I could see that she was still thinking hard on the question at hand. She had not lost her focus, even though it may have moved to the background. All of this, of course, was part of the game, and Liza knew it. Then silence again, maybe a question or two about the pattern, like a jury asking for the judge's instructions again when deliberating on a verdict. Lauren would figure out to offer to help her to write it down. "Hey, I never said you could use anything to write with," I complained. "You never said she could not before you asked the question." "Ha! Good point. Sounds strategic thinking." Lauren always watched carefully and absorbed a lot. But there was never a question about who her client was and what side of the aisle she was on. And then sometimes the drive just went on and on. and the songs changed on the radio, and it seemed like the 2 scoops were gone like a long sigh. Until nearly a full half hour later, 100 from the back seat. I always picked round numbers like that on the long ones. And when she eventually got to the answer, her victory grin told that she remembered that each time when she made it to the end. After a calculated, unfazed pause, "What did you say?" my completely straight-faced asked. Take note here that first-year dad's school includes an extensive class on facial muscle control, so as to avoid any kind of advanced detection of classified matter. Both Liza and Lauren especially, had become very adept at reading even the smallest minutia of my facial muscles, and therefore knew the entire known litany of my expressions and what they meant, even more than me at times. Their ability was especially helpful to them when they were spelling words out loud, letter by letter, while watching my face. I was, however, at least equally as skilled at hiding them. 100, she said again. The back seat was frozen and wide-eyed with anticipation now, and I saw the opportunity to go over the math problem out loud again as slowly as pouring out cold maple syrup and figuring it equally as slowly. These sessions could become pretty intense. It was maddening to them. When her victory came, it was always sweet, and the ice cream appropriately way too expensive. I had to act like she had taken my last dime and had to show her my empty wallet after having hidden any other remaining bills in my other pocket. Liza's eyes sparkled in those moments, and her little spirit shone, for she knew that her triumph was never given, but only earned. Her smile was beautiful, even heroic, just like her smile in the picture of her at the college coffee shop years later. Those early years yield impressions that imprinted her psyche very deeply. I felt and still feel mysteriously bonded to her inside of this form of conversation and play. In my heart, I don't feel like it has ever ended, even today. Spelling words also represented fertile ground. She was always asked to pick her own poison, to claim her own destiny or her own doom. Easy weakling still would like to kiss Barney, or medium boring yawn, or hard 2 grades ahead, or extra tough adult level, or jalapeno pepper burn your tongue and stomach, I asked. Dad, if I pick a hard one, you can't make it too hard. Dad, I would hear her retort. Yeah, Dad, and she's only a little kid like me. And Dad, you're the one who still likes Barney and pretends like he doesn't. Liza's next question now invariably arose. What do I get if I get it right? A monster sundae at Ben & Jerry's if I get the jalapeno one? The question was an adequate syllogism on Liza's part, but it was my job to keep changing the rules up, to keep her on her toes, to keep her guessing all the time. You get nothing and everything this time, Liza, I said. Oh God, what is that supposed to mean, her attorney cried, having already made the selections for the monster in her mind, having already started to taste the ice cream in her mouth in her vision, now experiencing it all evaporate. Note here that Lauren received a warning from the bench for blaspheming. No dessert after dinner next time. My response, of course, would trigger a discussion about personal responsibility, the quality and nature of choice, the meaning of life, morality and fairness, etc., although not quite using those words. You get nothing in the physical world this time, but you get the reward of knowing what you achieved, I said. Jalapeno, she declared, even before she could even begin to process a bit of what I had said, as if she cared. Truth be told, Liza just flatly and simply loved to compete. She loved to win. And I believe most of all that she loved to beat me specifically. I, of course, selflessly did nothing to inspire or aggravate this circumstance in her. It's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair. Her attorney was trying to get a chant started, or a cheer, or maybe the wave with the two of them. If she had no other takers, I had also seen her do a version of a one-person wave, although this was logistically challenging because it looked kind of weird, like an Indian worship ceremony or something. Now listen, I said, that is just the way it is sometimes. Sometimes nobody is going to give you anything, and you just have to decide for yourself how far you want to take things. Jalapeno, Liza. Dad, I already told you jalapeno, she reminded. Yeah, Dad, she already told you. Jalapeno, Liza. Spell jalapeno. Come on, keep up, Liza, I said. That frosted her. In the rearview mirror, I watched a little furrow in her brow develop, and she glared at me. She did not like me having the edge in the game at any time. I could see her downloading this new data. I would have to watch my own back in the future since I had no live-in attorney. I remember not too long after jalapeno that we were again driving and I was again testing and challenging and she was again antlering with me. There was $1 on the dashboard, so to speak, and Liza had picked her poison, atomic nuclear Armageddon or something like that. But before I could get a spelling word out, I got distracted by some idiot driver who had pulled in front of me. Hello, is anyone home upstairs? You moron, I offered to the driver who probably could not hear me. H-E-L-L-O, hello, Liza quickly shouted out. Liza, that was not your word. I have to drive and the driver got in my way. Come on, Dad, keep up, I heard. Payback, Chicago style. That was the thing about teaching, Liza. I imagine that fathers that teach their kids how to fence with swords face the same kind of thing. On one hand, you're glad that they can start to handle the sword well, and on the other, it smarts when they touch you. Fencers call it a touch. It can be a little worse than that sometimes. It did not always feel like a touch to me when Liza scored a point. Liza, I'm so sorry. I see your point here. I was not sensitive to you, and I can see where I deserve that one. You're absolutely right. She was starting to glow about now. Will you please consider forgiving me for my offensiveness? I humbled myself completely before her. That's okay, Dad. I understand. You can give me my word now. Courtesy could also be played in the game, and she did, in fact, always want to keep up. So she learned courtesy, partially because she could see she could beat me at that also. I will never be convinced that Liza did not understand the implications and subtleties of all these questions and issues. I saw it in her eyes as she grew. The games that we played hopefully dealt with some of the deeper questions of life: grace, forgiveness, loss, defeat, anger, hypocrisy, victory, loyalty, allegiance, fear, teamwork, choice, and my all-time favorite, attitude. Liza was a broad and inferential thinker with a rapid mind that could absorb and manage complex intellectual issues even at an early age. Her success later in college was of little surprise to me when I learned that she was on the dean's list. Some games, like divorce, were too much for her, though. It was no wonder it just did not fit into anything she knew or understood, and she did not know how to play, as if anyone did. Another area that brought great joy and possibility was the occasional verbal slip, which tended to be all the more interesting at her age. Liza might say at dinner, well, that certainly was a flight in the ointment. Being the patient, compassionate, and understanding father I am, I would immediately get up from the table and get a pen and paper. I want to write this one down, Liza, so I can have a record of it. How does this one work? Does the plane fly into the chapstick or something? Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I'm going to scream. This was Liza's attorney, going in first, remembering the court's prior warning, and then also measuring whether the scream might actually be well worth losing every bite of dessert. Yes, Dad, have you ever heard of a plane? They fly. Flying was invented a long time ago. Remember the Wright brothers? Remember how we flew on a jet plane here to Chicago? I thought you went to a really good school. How come you don't know that? Her little nostrils flared at me. I was perfectly willing to let Liza go down this road, as she did not yet see this line of reasoning was just making it worse for her flight in the ointment. Later in the evening, an airliner might appear on television, whereupon I would observe, "Look, Liza, there's a flight. I wonder if it might land in some ointment somewhere." She had to resort to jungle combat tactics. A wrestling couch attack was her only option at that point. But again, she always downloaded for the future. There was one day, though, a day that I could hardly ever forget, a day that I don't imagine Liza has forgotten either, wherever she is now. A day that will live in infamy, as Franklin Roosevelt once said, an epic day that comes to mind on this dedication day, a day that Liza won big. We were in a hotel room in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was thumbing through a local magazine looking for possible attractions. Liza and her attorney were jumping on the bed next to me. They always took advantage of the hotel room bed jumping exemption until they were big enough to start hitting the ceiling with their heads. If any of you are interested, the hotel room bed jumping exemption is next to the drive the hell out of the rental car exemption in the handbook on page 76. The magazine offered several attractions, including grown-up golf, water parks, miniature golf, go-karts, etc. I came across an entry that said greyhound racing, and the image of a dirt racetrack with modified buses racing like sand rails popped up in my mind. Looking back, I'm not quite sure exactly why. I guess because I had owned a sand rail and raced it in the desert in Phoenix previously, and maybe because some new video games had come out recently showing dirt track racing with more unusual vehicles. Maybe it was providential for Liza's benefit. "We could go watch greyhound buses race," I murmured. I vaguely remember both of them starting to laugh, and then Lauren saying something like, "Dad, you are so before Liza stopped her cold. "Wait, Lauren, wait, don't say anything," she warned. As an aside here, many of you probably do not know that Liza Marie Whitacre is widely recognized among the professorial community at Dad's School as both having invented and perfected the famous double anchor lock technique that is now used against dads globally. Many scientists, theorists, and thinkers have attempted to develop algorithms to effectuate a proactive defense to this technique to no avail. Some straitjackets, as Houdini knows, you just can't get out of. Liza's double anchor lock method is also recommended by adolescent attorneys everywhere because they hold up in court so well. "Dad," she said calmly, "I just want to make sure I heard you correctly and that Lauren also heard you correctly. Did you just say that one of our choices was going to watch greyhound buses race?" Now, I was aware in the moment that Liza was moving to apply the dreaded double anchor. So I consulted the Dad School emergency handbook checklist in my head. I was still in a trance, I guess, because I didn't see anything wrong with their statement. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying," I confirmed. And then, I guess the best way to describe what happened is this. The two of them let out a scream of pure laughter so loud that I thought I felt the hotel vibrate, and they began jumping furiously on the bed while holding on to one another. They did not care about dessert or television or anything like that. The walls of the room fell away. Judy Garland and Toto skipped in, followed by the Tin Man, the Lion, and the Scarecrow. The Munchkins appeared, grabbed the girls' hands, and started singing, "Hi-ho, the merry-o, ding-dong, the wicked witch is dead." I still did not understand what the issue was, which only added to their glee. I could only suspect that the dreaded double anchor had found its mark and braced for a slow-breaking tsunami wave of humiliation. Their little faces were beet red now, and I was concerned they were laughing so hard that they might stop breathing. Dad, I know that we're not allowed to call you stupid or dumb or an idiot or anything like that," Liza gasped. Her attorney, snot streaming from her nose, screamed laughter, bounced up and tackled her again. "But Dad, do you not understand that greyhounds are dogs? And they're talking about dog races." Wait, let me get a pen and paper so I can write this down. What were you actually seeing, Dad? Who was driving the buses? What color were they? Lauren was turning purple. Now that I could see what the real score was, I would have willingly lost my dessert and screamed myself. Suffice to say, the next few days were a little difficult for me, but what's fair is fair, and truth be told, I probably deserved it. I remember on the flight back, the two of them sitting behind me. Liza's little arm would appear from between the seats and grab my shirt. Look, Dad, there's a guy over there wearing a gray shirt. I wonder if he has a hound at home. I would then hear them burst out laughing for what seemed like an eternity, threatening the whole piece of the airliner and making the stewardess look like she did not know if the pilot was really in control of the plane or not. This went on for days. Today, I offer to everyone who attended or could not attend the opportunity to bury a note to Liza in the roots of a plant or a flower in her honor. I wanted to share with you that I have carefully selected mine to her. You see, the bus race fiasco occurred before the invention of the World Wide Web. And yes, Liza, the game is still on. While technically there is no specific exact precedent for Greyhound bus racing, I can say after extensive research, there's a long checkered, so to speak, history of yellow school bus racing. NASCAR even sponsors school bus races prior to their main event at times. So Liza, I'm offering a news article for you as proof that I'm not quite as big of a dolt as you felt you proved that fateful day. Now, there might be some of you that would say, how can he do that? Liza's not here to defend herself. That's not fair. One of my more familiar responses to critics these days is to suggest they get in line. But today is a special day, so I'm free to explain. And if you do feel that way, let me share you two reasons why I'm okay with playing with her even today. The first is I have utter confidence that her spirit lives on in Lauren and in Max, and that they will continue to represent her in this regard. Evan and Lolo, more recently, have become part of this same legacy. The second reason is more difficult to share and more tragic. There is no justice in this life. Liza's death has taught me that more profoundly than anything ever could have. If this sounds cynical, I can assure you it is, and beyond. I left cynical back on the road some time ago. I passed it on the turnpike about 50 mile markers back. If there was justice in this life, I know how the last years would have looked for me and for Liza. I can feel what a just and right moment would have held in my Liza father heart, and I can see what it would have looked like in a vision. Years from now, I would be in a wheelchair, out on the grass on a spring day like today, sitting with my aged head bowed slightly. It would be sunny, and my sweet Liza would be sitting next to me. Now, a mother, a wife, a lover, a teacher, a loving daughter, a devoted sister, a friend, a barista, a thinker, a leader, and all the other things that she was destined to become on the trajectory of her life's path. I would have been able to see and hear her children, my grandchildren, underfoot, just like Papa saw and heard little Liza and little Lauren from atop his front porch years ago. I would have felt her arm, now grown too big to fit between the airplane seats, resting on mine. And even though I might have had dribble leaking from my old mouth, and even though I may not have been all there, I know this. I know what she would have done, because I know my Liza in a way that no one else ever will, because each of us knew her in our own way and in a way that no one else could ever know. In that true and just and right moment, if a bus should have happened to have driven by, I can see her looking up into my eyes intently, even a little challengingly, and certainly playfully, even if I was not all there, The same eyes I saw in the rearview mirror, smiling the whole time to see if there was any game left in the old man. Dad, look, there's a bus. Can you see it? I wonder if it is going to the races. Part 2, Grief. The windows of the van are tinted just enough so that you can't see who might be sitting inside it. It could be the whole family or maybe just one or two of them, I don't know. I always imagine it is her father sitting in there alone, although I suspect that the truth is that the mixture of the occupants change. A teenage girl was walking up that same street one night in our neighborhood with two of her friends to go enjoy the local 4th of July fair when she was fatally struck down by a speeding SUV. In the midst of dozens of people, the SUV veered unexpectedly, hit her, and then accelerated to escape. To this day, despite efforts and a reward, neither the SUV nor the driver have been found. A makeshift memorial of pictures, candles, and stuffed animals quickly developed at the exact site of the moment where she left our plane of existence to travel somewhere else. The van sits there for hours at a time on the side of the road, pointed at the memorial like a hunting dog posing, night or day, indicating and frozen toward the site of passage, the point of her exit and her entry. At night, the headlight beams bleach the space and the objects, making a sad, sweet, and eerie little pocket of night, death, grief, sadness, seance, and theater. A requiem plays in my head. I wish very much that I did not understand it all so well, that all of their behaviors and rituals and sleepwalking and gesturing and urgency and order and chaos did not resonate so evenly and smoothly and clearly within me, that I did not see their fruitless and impossible attempts to reason with pain, and that what is unbearably painful will become unimaginably normal. I see the beams are cast in a vain attempt to comfort her in the same area with safe light, to provide illumination to avoid another crash. There should have been more light that night, so the driver could have seen her, so she would not have been struck, so let's light it all up. It is at once a wish to reverse the collision, a promise not to leave her alone, an atonement for not standing in the way of the speeding SUV to protect her by absorbing the hit, a clinging to their own sanity, and a prayer to ask and beg for peace and forgiveness and grace and the ability to survive the unbearable, impossible sadness. When it drizzles, they bring the stuffed animals in, and I am left wondering if the big blue lion was won that tragic night by one of her friends. The rain stops, and the lion slowly reappears, and the candles are lit yet once again. It is an insistence of sorts, a tender and futile stubbornness, a declaration of where they will make their last stand against death, their last stand before having to realize that they will have to move their line back yet again and learn another step in this dance with death and grief, where they're forced to let go more and compelled to learn to invent new ways to hold on. I would not dare to stop to speak to them in the van, even though I can read them and could see what is in the pools of their eyes if I looked there, knowing that their post-traumatic stress disorder is only pre-traumatic at this point. It's hard to put the reason I would give them privacy into words. I once saw a Chilean mechanic who had walked out alive after being trapped inside a mine for 68 days. He went home and began building a wall around his house. Each morning he got up and began working on it, constructing it alone with his own hands, toiling in the dirt until darkness. When a reporter asked why he was building it, he could only sputter, "I don't know, I just have to build it." I understand why he's building it. I did not need the reporter to ask him the question. I drive past the van, my heart broken again each time. They have their walls, I have mine. Mine may be mud walls as well, and the walls may be awful and terrible in some ways, but at least they are made of my own mud. Yes, it is mud, but at least it isn't my own. I passed them on the way to the Saturday afternoon service I occasion at the chapel. I don't go on my own volition, but am gracious enough to go to give my wife company. It's all for her benefit, of course. One Saturday, the pastor spoke about how his entire life changed the moment he held his daughter in his arms for the first time. He said he was transformed, overcome and consumed in and by a revelation of love and change. I tried to remain the pedestrian, but the truth of his words placed a sudden intense pressure behind my eyeballs. He kept going, and the common knowing cut like a knife into the artery within me, and my tears leaked through my eyes, streaming down my face silently as I sat there still, flowing like blood, pumping out of my heart each time it beat. When I first held Liza in my hands, huddling her next to my chest, my knees nearly buckled, and she nearly took me down. I never knew my heart was capable of loving another human being fully until that moment. I was the Grinch holding a little Cindy Lou Who, and my heart was growing 3 times in size. I have silently understood that story as I've read it to children through the years. I can animate that part without even trying. After Liza came, I knew where the writer got that one from his own life without ever having to inquire. Liza was no bigger than a cat. I was 26 years old. I feared no one, and yet I could not believe that an object, a thing, a being, a child, a daughter could hold so much sweet, absolute power over me in my heart. I was scared and fascinated. I was spellbound. I am still scared and fascinated and spellbound by her. I remember clearly lying next to her in bed as a baby. She and I were alone while she napped in the Arizona late morning sun while lying on her back. Her little hands protruded up like animal paws, and her face was frozen, locked in sleep spell. I watched her in silence and smelled her and listened to the cadence of her breathing rhythm. And then unexpectedly, she smiled. She smiled in her sleep. I was transfixed by the mystery of it all, the mystery of her world. Where had she gone in her little mind? What exactly was she feeling? Was I with her? Was she dreaming of me? Would she let me know? Could I come with her? How could I protect her? Then it occurred to me simply that her dreams were in her smile, and her smile was in her dreams. I reasoned that it was likely my job to hold her and love her and bear witness to her and to her life. Her gift to me was that I would be allowed to watch her in this world. I would be allowed to witness her sleep dream smile as she lived. When I imagined this memorial to Liza in her life several months ago, I felt pretty strongly that there should not be access to the bench from the sidewalk. I felt at the time, and still do in some ways, that deep grief is a place you have to deliberately walk around to enter and then deliberately walk around to exit. A person can be like tissue paper next to a flame if it is too close to you all the time. The grief can completely incapacitate you. It is as powerful and overwhelming as the love I felt when I first held her, the mirror or the inverse of that. So you have to build a wall, or to keep a fence up to survive, to try and coexist next to it. Then one day I was watching the ghost bike from the other side of the street in solitude from a distance, perpetually shocked and reverent, when a long line of grade school kids came marching towards the bike in my direction, corralled like livestock by their teachers. As they came in proximity of the ghost bike, I expected some surprise, alarm, fear, withdrawal, even shame as they passed. But all of the opposites occurred. The kids lovingly reached out, touched, inspected, looked, pointed out, and even grinned. They giggled. Not mean giggle, not doing something I'm not supposed to do giggle, not the teacher is not looking giggle, not joke giggle, just good old giggle. Liza giggle. And if I could know I would not be declared certifiably insane, I would swear that I saw the bike and Liza's spirit with it nuzzle and encourage them all right back. The pressure came again, the artery split, and the tears streamed. I had no company this time, so I had no need to sob quietly. The day was not quite yet done with me yet, because then I saw a bus stop at the corner, wait to take off again, and when it did, it revealed Forrest Gump sitting there and offering chocolates and telling the story of his life. I saw then that it was no coincidence that Forrest told us about his life while we sat next to him on a bench. A bench is a place you can sit next to someone and comfortably reminisce. It is safe, like the interior of a van, a place where not all of the world's conventions and rules apply. Things can come out on a bench and in a minivan that normally would not. They are environments of confession, reflection, and even psychoanalysis. After seeing Forrest sitting there, I realized that the access gate was important, physically and metaphysically. Liza's spirit was outward, and it shone when inspired by the presence of other people. She delighted in interaction, and she worked to put herself in the situation. If she could see a way to, she would try to find a path to change your life somehow. And if she could not find one, she would try anyway. Take this wall down, Mr. Gorbachev, I heard in my mind. Open up this fence to the memory bench. I imagined the gate then, and I walked over to the side of the bench, now just dirt and grass. I looked up and saw the sign for Legends Field. I imagined the lights on for a night game, and I saw shoeless Joe Jackson walking out on the field of grass, now the field of dreams. I thought of the lights of the van, and I changed my mind about the mud walls, and I wanted to tap on the dark tinted windows and explain that maybe we could get the right alchemy going after all. Gabriella Draws was her name, and she was every inch as beautiful as Liza was in her own way. We could turn the van headlights on all the way bright towards the field and light the whole damn thing up and beg shoeless Joe to bring Liza and Gabriella back for the night. And I could sit in the stands and drill Liza with math questions between innings, and her attorney could yell at me if they were too hard, and Liza could make mittens for Gabby, and the post-traumatic fantasy of embracing the truck dryer on her behalf could stop. And Liza would try to apply the double anchor lock, and she could make coffee drinks for everyone and tell us what we had to do to fix our lives. Give us some time on this bus stop bench with her, Forrest. Give us this field for a night game with her, shoeless. Give us this day, our daily bread, Lord. Give us our daily Liza. Give us Liza back. Please, God. Give us just a moment with her again to smell her and see her eyes and tell her that we love her so dearly. The breadth, depth, height, and width of Liza's abbreviated life will give this memory bench a good long run. The paint will wear off this bench before she's finished. I wouldn't bet against her. What stories will she tell us all as we sit next to her vibrant Liza spirit? There will always be many to tell to her and to hear from her, some eternally private and some for all to know. I will hear and tell of the look in her sweet Liza eyes as she saw Snow and her sister for the first time in the same morning moments in my arms. The feeling of her soapy little butt sitting on my tummy in the bathtub, and her infectious giggle when she intentionally slipped. Her absolute courage in throwing her arms up the first time riding a lightning-fast roller coaster, millimeters above the height requirement with Kleenex stuffed in her shoes. The many times I had to act as if I did not know she and Lauren were hiding under their bed sheets together, even though they were giggling. Her resolve in arguments and her insistence in never letting on that you won until weeks or months later. Her demands that Lauren always play the male roles so that she could be the beautiful princess or divine queen in the after-dinner basement show. The time she asked to borrow my Porsche for her lemonade stand so she could offer space car rides to the locals to make more money. Her love of God, her leadership qualities, and her desire to compete and succeed in school. Her pure and unselfish energy, her turning up the volume way too loud on the damn Game Boy in public places and not making her bed and leaving the bathroom a mess with toothpaste mashed in the sink. Reliving the showdown I gambled with her when I insisted that she choose between being a child of the light or the darkness. Repeating the tender, reassuring words she spoke to Max as she held him down while he was circumcised as a baby. Sadly recounting holding her hands in the car when the planes hit the Twin Towers. Questioning her unceasing ability to cut loose and party. Apologizing for mistakes I made as her father. Thanking her for her commitment to excellence in everything, even making art and coffee. Inquiring about her love of France. I could go on forever, paging through the magazine pages of her life with her. All of us have memories that we will feel to our own graves and stories that we will tell for as long as we live. Liza, I wish with all of my being that you could once again feel the deep historical pulse of that first moment I held you. The heartbeat of the eternal, immaculate love felt for you by all who knew you. And remember, lay down, sweet little girl, and fall asleep. We will sit here with you and tell you stories and hear yours through the years we have left on this earth, these years that we will miss you. Fall asleep peacefully and rest always knowing that we are here. Let your dreams take you, knowing that you are dearly loved and missed. Relax now, and while you sleep and dream, let the smile come to your lips again.
Part 3, Dedication.
I'd like to first thank my wife, Tammy, for her love and patience through the process of actualizing this memorial, and for choosing to join me in making a gift of Liza's memory bench as a couple. It's been a long and arduous and freeing journey, to say the least, and of course it's not over. Also, there have been a few who have stayed close and walked with me, and especially in recent years that I cannot do without. You know who you are, I acknowledge your fidelity and constancy quietly in my heart. Without Kara Donaldson, the supervisor of Hamlin Park, and Janice Taylor of the Planning Department, Chicago Park District, and recently in double overtime, Foreman Brian Begain, very simply, this project never would have seen the light of day. There's no rapid way to explain all that they went through to make this day possible. I saw them insist that a government bureaucracy become soft and learn to sympathize. Their tears are in this soil also. Janice and Kara especially, thank you so much for your uncommon sense of justice and rare generosity. Liza would have liked both of you and identified strongly with your spirits of intelligent, measured rebellion. I thank you. We all thank you, and Liza thanks you. Working on this project, it always seemed to me like a bigger hand than mine was guiding. I felt like one of the iron workers building the new One World Trade Center tower after a decade earlier suffering through the cleanup of the devastation. I understood them now when they described building the tower anew at the same site as a means of healing. In truth, all of us who knew Liza are navigating through our grief, personal and shared, as best we can. We're all in deep waters. As much as I would like to believe otherwise at times, Hamlin Park is not a cemetery, so we must be mindful of that in our observance of Liza's memory. Municipal entities should and will react eventually to behavior that does not comprehend or honor public spaces. At Gabriella's site, for example, a cold and lonely street sign bearing her name now stands that reminds against reckless driving, but also warns against parking there. There is no bench to genuflect. We're fortunate to have ours, but we must also respect the context and the scale of it. We must be mindful. At the Masterful World Trade Center Memorial, people may leave artifacts on the walls surrounding the open wounds of the towers. This memorial site is different, so we'll have to improvise. After negotiations with her chief groundskeeper, Kara has informally agreed to allow us to help landscape and care for the area around the bench. But we must be respectful and careful, show discretion, and keep the space amenable to the public. If we have a memento or a note to share for Liza, let's bury it deep down in the roots of the flowers. Kara won't know. And knowing her, if she did, she most likely would not notify the groundskeeper. What is below ground level is not seen and is our secret and Liza's. Our objective should be to create common visible beauty above grade that can be revered and enjoyed by all. This is also a fitting way to invite others to sit with Liza's spirit. We can walk into our outdoor church here and light a candle by planting a flower for Liza next to her bench. I'd like to thank you so much for listening and caring, for coming and reading, and for joining us in the continuation of loving and remembering Liza, a remarkable human being by anyone's measure, a light that burned brightly, but too quickly. I close this dedication with these final words. The psychoanalytic theories of Nicholas Abraham and Maria Torok argue that one generation's secrets get passed to the next via taboo words, which unspoken become ghosts in the unconscious. They are so much like the Japanese fishing vessel stormed out to sea by the earthquake and tsunami. Unmoored, listless, empty, rusted, haunted, and dangerous. My intent when closing today is to speak clearly every needed word to obviate any possibility of such ghosts and to try and bring peace and parity through love and the expression of values and ideas now annealed. The Coast Guard sank the ghost ship with a volley of torpedoes. I strike these words and engrave them in time and space with the intent and audacity of cleansing, reassuring, record-setting, and disallowing this toxic taboo for future generations. I consecrate the bench's flower soil with Liza's ashes, and now declare it as a resting place. I hereby dedicate this memory bench in the name of Liza Marie Whitacre on this day in Hamlin Park in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States of America, on this planet Earth, spinning softly in space. And I finally state the following. I declare that the driver of the truck, Jose Rodriguez, did not make a mistake or do anything that was wrong that day in his humanity. I have driven these streets and walked this neighborhood. I've heard all the accounts, and he was as torn up as anyone was that day, and probably still is. He deserves peace just as much as we do, and I have personally conveyed that as well. And to those at his now former company, Greco and Sons, who also felt the deep echo of pain in this tragedy, I welcome them today. Liza, just as you would have wished, we are all sitting at the foot of the cross at this moment. All are welcome, and Jose is forgiven. We're washing him with the cleansing blood of Christ, the God you relished, releasing him from survivor's guilt and offering forgiveness. Jose, Liza would have wanted nothing less than for her memory to be an inspiration for you to live passionately and resolutely. She would have insisted that her memory not be a burden to you or your loved ones. She would have made you a pair of mittens while setting you straight. I speak for her today, knowing exactly what she would have wanted to see from you. Go in peace, Jose. Live in the light. I declare Liza did nothing wrong that day and just slipped off her bike. I declare that Tiffany did nothing wrong that day, and that her presence was a blessing to Liza that fateful morning. Tiffany, I am so grateful that you were there to be with her, that she was not alone, and that she died doing what she loved doing best, adventuring in the world and revealing its beauty to another. I am very grateful to those who showed courage and presence of mind and heart that day and after, who were not afraid to love her in those moments of pain and need. Those in the bus, and from this neighborhood, and from this amazing church on the corner, who came to her and cared for her and spoke to her and held her hand and touched her and listened to her in her last moments so she could feel heard at the end. All of you are tender heroes. I declare to you, Liza, that you left us too soon, and there was not enough time to see things repaired between us. I forgive you, and I both hope and know that you forgive me too, amidst our mutual offenses. I forever release us from blame, shame, anger, and hurt. I believe our love for one another always transcended, and just because your physical form left us, that does not mean we are not still together every day, that you are not always daily with me. I declare that every day of your little girl life is etched in the ancient walls of my heart and in the hearts of everyone here and all who knew and loved you. Like in a gallery or a museum, each day of my life, I walk around slowly in silence in my heart, with tears and smiles on my daddy face, remembering you, admiring you, and loving you always. I declare on Liza's behalf that her parents' divorce did not, does not, and never will define her. And I believe that she was at a point where she was beginning to comprehend that and was beginning to reap the rewards of that realization. I declare that when it is time to give the corner of Damon and Wellington back to the city of Chicago and to the neighborhood, and to thank them all for lending it to us for months and even years beyond protocol, we will be ready and free from another trauma of loss. It will not be my hand that cuts the cable of the ghost bike from its anchor here on earth. I will leave that to others, her friends, her sister, or the city of Chicago, who will eventually act in their own volition in their own time. But for that inevitable moment, I declare now that when the cable is cut, and the physical center of gravity of our grief moves to the bench completely forever. The ghost bike will ascend into heaven by its spread fairy wings so that Liza can ride it above us. And I declare that we, along with future generations, will care for this memory bench and keep it beautiful for the next 100 years. I declare that we will see you again, Liza, in the next world. So wait for us there. We will take comfort in the meantime, knowing that blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, blessed are those who are pure in heart, blessed are the peacemakers, and blessed are those who mourn. And Liza, I declare that while you are waiting there, and while we are still here, in the sweet and fine words of your eternal personal anthem that was tattooed, emblazoned on your pure, beautiful skin, we promise you, Liza, that we will always be optimistic, and we will always be yours. As we end this memorial service where every person here is pulling tears out of their eyes, standing here in remembrance, we also choose to declare in the resurrection of Jesus that this memory also points us forward to celebrate
that this is not the end, that this is sacred ground that has a future, and that is a sacred life that has a future. And we look forward to celebrating on firm ground, along with the hope that Liza carried for resurrection. We carry that same hope and look forward to walking with her and celebrating a future that is in the person of Jesus. I want to thank you for being here today to stand with this family and with those who knew Liza. And I would ask that you join me in prayer as we close out this time together. And then I want to invite you across the street here where we'll be serving lunch. Feel free to stay and bring food back across and linger here as long as you would like. I'd invite you, if you would, please, to pray with me the prayer that Jesus taught his disciples. And if you'd stand wherever you are, we'd invite you to stand and pray what some might call the Our Father. But just the sound of your voices as we pray, dedicating this place, this ground that brings us to remember a life that we will choose not to forget. And so let's pray together the Our Father. Our Father, who is in heaven, holy is your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.